Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on the 16th day of October 2023. It is the second day of the new petroleum prices at the pump. And the impact is real, has been felt the past 1 month, during which time every litre of a product that you know went beyond the 200 shilling mark. Honorable Boss is telling us that there are challenges that are beyond the control of the country, quite on point on that, but also the long term should be we increase our exports, reduce our imports. But in the meantime, it's a difficult situation that you are at. Let me start with you, Honorable. Sorry, keep calling you Honorable. Herman Manyora, you need to vie now.
Okay, he is. By the work he does, he's honorable.
Yeah. I'll vie for the top one.
The top one?
Of course.
Oh, okay. Amazing. We'll wait for that to hear your policies. So tell us what you would do with the petroleum prices of what's going on at a time that, yes, the Deputy Speaker makes a case for all these levies and taxes, but then again, Kenyans would look at it and say, for instance, some of those taxes, like the value-added tax, it was just doubled some 3-4 months ago. Had it been half of that, then it wouldn't be where we are. It would actually be just before, just over 200 shillings for a litre of petrol. What are the possible solutions from how you see it?
I think we must start by saying you will not solve the problem by blaming people. Neither will you solve it by trying to explain things away. No, that, you see, last year people were blaming Uhuru Kenyatta and saying there's nothing about Ukraine, all sort of things, and today the same people are now citing the same. So that won't help anybody. Neither is this idea of trying to explain. We have a problem on our hands. How do we do it? We say there are things that are domestic which we can do something about. We also say there are things that are beyond our reach. Let's start with those things that are beyond our reach. Those factors, Boss has explained, they're obvious factors, you know. They are global factors. But even there's something you can do. We allow people to choose our friends, and we pay for it. You know it? If Kenya were to get oil from Iran, for example, you can be assured the price of oil will be reduced very significantly. You know, but for over the years, we have allowed other people to tell us who can be our friends and who can be our friends. So that we must pay for, and we are paying for it. On the domestic front, I can't say more than you have said. The fact that there are levies and taxes, which we can reduce. For example, I've always believed that VAT is an immoral tax. It's criminal. One principle about taxation, Sam, is that it must discriminate. But a tax where the man who stays in Runda and Karen pays the same tax as the man who stays in Kibra, that tax is immoral, and that's what VAT is. It doesn't discriminate. Yet, tax must discriminate. And to those who have, you know, from them we should get more. You can't get tax from those who don't have taxes. So really, like you said, there are many things we can do to remove some of these taxes. It is sad that you can tax Kenyans in terms of fuel levies, and one of them is for road maintenance and road development and what have you. Then proceed on a spree to distribute, you know, to give people roads, roadside declarations. This road from here will be made in another 6 months, this road. Why can't you understand that Kenyans are suffering, and for the time being, we may stop the expansion of roads until things are slightly better. So there's a lot we can do in terms of looking at those levies and taxes to say, for now, this particular tax, we can pend it. When the situation improves, we can reinstate that tax or levy. So that's the way I'm seeing. But there's a bigger thing, because you asked me what I would do if I was the president. If I'm the president, I'll look beyond taxes for revenue, and that's what is killing this country. We are looking for revenue from nowhere else apart from taxes. This way, you'll tax Kenyans the way you have taxed them until they have nothing to give you. The joke outside there today, Sam, is that why can't the government take the taxes? We take the balance, we will take the taxes. Because the government is taking more than what we are remaining with. That's a joke, but it's a serious thing. It shows you what is happening. This is so serious because If you tax Kenyans in the way you have taxed them, then it becomes counterproductive. Go to any petrol station, unless those ones that are very, 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 very strategical placed, they will tell you there's a drop in the sale of fuel for up to about 40%. And Treasury knows it's not collecting the revenue commensurate with the increased taxes. That shows you there's a point beyond which you can't tax people. And this government doesn't seem to know. So the reason why they are doing that is because they think the only way you can get money is from taxes.
Which other way can we get money?
I'm getting there, bless. How did China get its money? Now it's loaning everybody. All these companies you see here, all these Chinese companies, they are government owned, my friend. You are busy selling your parastatals for a song in the name of privatization, selling them for a song. There's a time we wanted to sell what is called Kenya Re. The price that we were about to get for Kenya Re was much less than one building owned by Kenya Re, the Insurance Plaza or Anniversary Tower. You get what I'm saying? Pan Paper went for 900 million. Can you imagine? Do you know how much land Pan Paper has? Do you know what property it has in Nairobi? You are throwing away your parastatals, which can earn you revenue, and yet all these companies that are Chinese are government.
When they are non-performing,
what non-performing? Because we don't want them to perform. Give me one, any, and I turn it around. China made its money from business. And all these companies you see, including media, you are in the media, all these media houses you see here, all are government owned. Government should generate revenue by doing business. Unless we realize
is that a good thing at a time that
we shall tax Kenyans until there will be nothing to tax them?
Honorable, sorry.
Yes, I think I will. Thank you, sir.
Oh, just go
ahead. Thank you. And I understand everybody here is on it. It's okay. It's understandable.
So, is that practical at a time that you want to encourage private investment in a country without controlling so much of that?
What is the problem? Sam, if I give you KBC and I tell you this is a cash cow, I want this thing to function. In the next 3 years, I want KBC to generate revenue, and I'm the president. You'll do it.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Honorable Wandeto.
Finally, let me just add the last one.
Can I?
Just a second so that we finish. So that, because I've talked about generating revenue by doing business, we also have natural resources in this country, which we give people for our own. Wildlife, our forests, minerals. Have we ever thought of getting money from those things? That's what we should. That's where we should turn. If we don't turn there, you tax Kenyans until they collapse, and they're just about to collapse.
Honorable Wandeto, you know, we can keep describing the problem, explaining the cause with almost no solutions. But I mean, there are businesses that are going to close down if they have not as yet because of the expenditure side. Is there any practical solution that can come? Because she says that there was the government-to-government deal that was supposed to partly control the dollar versus
for that time.
The Kenya shilling. Yes, yeah. I mean, before then, we were at 132 shillings against the dollar. Now we are over 150. So it's not working. The promise was that it would go below 120 or even, well, 120 shillings or less. But it's not working. Is there a practical solution that can come from...
How do you bring down the rate to the Kenya shilling to the dollar? How do you bring it down?
That is the question I'm asking, because there was a promise that the government-to-government deal...
Okay, but maybe you have a way of bringing it down. Maybe you can tell us.
Honorable Boss, I asked the questions here, and I'm saying that the promise from the government side, no less than the president, was that the dollar would go down. Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua was saying, I encourage those people that have dollars in their houses, please take them to the bank because you're going to suffer losses. This has not happened. Yeah. Is there any practical solution that can come from those in leadership, Honorable Wandeto?
Sam, I think the first thing is to congratulate my senior here, Gladys. Today she has done a fantastic job explaining point by point to Kenyans why we are where we are. And I think it cannot come any better than that. And this is what we need to be doing, to be very, very honest with our people, to explain to them, you know, what is happening. Because it is easy for us to come to this show, some sensationalize things, you know, and, you know, even maybe spread some falsehood. The only two things maybe I would have wanted to add
what is falsehood here?
To what she said, Sam. No, I'm saying we can come here and say things that are not factual.
Have we done that here?
You know, and I'll explain a few of them, you know, as I go on. I think the only thing that Gladys has not added here is that right now we have now again a new conflict which we would all like to downplay, but which we may have significant impact. This whole Israeli, Palestine conflict, and depending on how it spans out in the next few weeks, again, that could pile tremendous pressure, on things, around oil. The rebound of the Chinese economy, again, that will, start having again more demand, on oil products. You have asked, what can we do? And again, Gladys has done a good job talking about what we need to do to stimulate, to lower this whole dollar thing by exporting more. Because today we know what Americans are doing. They basically have exported their inflation, across the world. And this whole dollar thing, Sam, is not just a Kenyan thing. I was just reading some numbers. Japan, which is a very strong economy, I think have had a 20 or so % devaluation of their currency. If you look at Britain, almost all countries in the world are hurting, because what is happening when America...
Wait, depreciation or devaluation?
Devaluation, or it's the same thing, depreciation of your shilling or devaluation of your shilling.
I thought devaluation is deliberate.
It's the same thing. Let's talk about depreciation here. So if you look at what is happening in America because of all this inflation, and now they're trying to cool down their economy, you know what happens? Inflation basically reduces the value of your currency. And because almost all countries in the world are now billing their invoices in dollars, we have all become a dollar global economy. So for example, if today, Sam, a donut was costing a dollar, in the US, okay? For example, and which was equivalent to 100 shillings, maybe 5 years ago. An American coming here would be able to buy 2 donuts, for the same dollar. I'm just trying to explain how America exports. And this is why this whole conversation about, do we even need to start thinking about alternative settlement currencies for global trade? That's why all these conversations are becoming, very, very important.
What chances of success do you see that?
It's a difficult thing because, of course, we are dealing with now a 73-year-old system, trying to overhaul a 73-year-old system. I think this whole Bretton Woods, arrangement was done, I think, around 1945, 1948.
Before we're independent.
Before we're independent. So it's a difficult system, but I think we must begin the journey somewhere. And I think one way would also be to say within, say, East Africa, how can we trade in our local currencies? Just to ensure that, we are not selling between ourselves and Uganda. We are always looking at the dollar. So if the dollar has misbehaved, the price of the same commodity coming from Uganda goes up because we are invoicing, with the dollars.
I'm interested in understanding what you're saying.
Yes.
So if you're to de-dollarize the international trade, how do you begin that conversation?
It's a difficult conversation. Some people have started. The BRICS have started it. Yeah, and they're saying, why don't we start looking for alternative reserve currencies? Okay, but also, how do we also start having these smaller regional trading blocks, trading in currencies that are maybe close to each other, that are easier to manage? Because now we are all victims of whatever goes on in America. So when America coughs, like they say, the whole world catches a cold. It's been coughing and sneezing this year. Look at what is happening even to advanced economies.
Honorable Wandeto, I can add for you one very interesting way, is that's why our president has been at the forefront in pushing for the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. Reason being, we're telling ourselves we've got 1.3 billion people. We have a trillion something economy within ourselves. Today, for me to fly to Cameroon to go and do business, I need a visa. To go to Uganda, I need a visa. No, I'm not Uganda, but I need a visa for Zambia. I need a visa for all sorts of countries. So when the Global North actually established visa regulations to lock us Africans out of the Global North, now we are using it to lock ourselves. We should trade among ourselves. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement had actually envisaged that by 2024, we would have an Africa Central Bank. So that when I'm trading with Uganda and trading with Zambia, I don't trade in US dollars, I trade in an African currency. And that we would have an African passport and an AU visa, the way you have an EU visa. That way, we'd promote trade among ourselves and keep our US dollar reserves, which means when the money when the fuel lands in Kenya, what they call the free on board cost, immediately I have sufficient dollar reserves. But right now, we don't have sufficient dollar reserves. And that's why this conversation is not a conversation in Kenya. It's a conversation we're having in Africa. And you'll see that it was attempted by Kwame Nkrumah, attempted by Sankara. It was attempted, who was the other president? Lumumba or somebody, and then they were killed. Because the global north has never wanted us to be free of this issue of being caught up with the dollar. And that's why, and now I was in Cameroon for a meeting of African speakers. And one of the conversations we had is that we need to fast track the ratification of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement after, and now 44 countries have signed. But unfortunately, we need to go back to our parliaments and change our laws so that we remove the tariffs between ourselves. If we can trade with Africa alone, believe me, we can be able to deal with the cost of fuel. That's why I'm saying there's short-term and long-term.
Okay.
And the more we have conversations with the people of Kenya and the people of our region, we can actually take this. We have now moved the implementation of establishments of the Africa Central Bank to 2028. So let's pray that that comes into effect. If it does, it's going to change.
I think let me just finish this. Let me just finish this because
I want to transition.
I just had one more point, Sam.
Yes,
I just wanted, because I had to, to give Gladys that moment. But the other thing that we must do is that we must start our journey to green energy. This overdependence on oil, I know it will be difficult to fix, but we must start our journey. We must start our journey discussing EV vehicles, for example. We must start our journey to, have a bigger portion of our electricity being green. I know right now we are at 87%.
But Honorable, even if you have to get those electric vehicles, I mean, the cost of electricity is also going up. The cost of buying an electric vehicle is not cheap.
I have said, Sam, we have to start the journey. What is the future? Because today we have a problem at our hand. We know, like we have just right to say it here, there are short-term solutions, there are long-term solutions. So that's what I'm saying. Adoption of green energy, it is something that we must start. Why is our electricity expensive? One of the big components we have is the fuel, again, the fuel levy, the inflation adjustment, the dollar adjustment. All these things is because we are relying on things that are coming from outside the country to basically produce, our power. And in closing, Sam, Manyora has said something that I wanted to correct. He talked about us getting friends, like Iran and the rest, yeah? And I also wanted to alert him that Iran is actually a founder member of OPEC. So we are still in the same thing. And OPEC, by the way, is not necessarily an Arab thing. There are 7 African countries, including Democratic Republic of Congo.
All right, so let us transition.
And the last one, because it's important we correct it. He also said that we can forego taxes. Some, and we can even forego, building of roads. We hold building of roads, as we allow these things to happen. And I wanted to correct him and say, part of this government spending in infrastructure that is going on, it is so important for a depressed economy. How do you stimulate a depressed economy like we are having currently? It is by more spending. And those infrastructure projects, if you stop them today, the country will grind.
That's even wrong.
So I'm just wondering.
That's even worse. Please allow me to correct this guy.
No, wait.
Please,
if we need
in the interest of the viewers, please, let me correct you.
If we need taxes from the petroleum products that you're selling, if you go electric vehicle, where will you get the taxes from?
There'll obviously be, we're not
taxes that will come to that.
There'll be taxes that will be added on that, okay? But what we are saying today...
it beats logic.
What we are saying today...
Doesn't it?
It doesn't beat logic, Sam. You are refusing to see my point. Today you are importing...
The dollar.
You are importing a product that you don't produce, so you are paying for it in dollars, okay? You are subject to what is happening with the dollar rates. Now, if we have our own... green energy. It is not subject to dollar imports. It's not subject to all these things. So even if you impose taxes on it, even if you impose taxes on it, overall costs will be lower.
We don't import wind energy or renewable energy, but it's still expensive because you pay electricity. That is now more expensive than it was a year ago. You wanted to correct something.
Yeah, first of all, the issue of OPEC I think, is a primary school knowledge. We know OPEC countries. I also wanted to correct this idea of spending. Uhuru came up with it when he was at the Treasury about stimulus packages, But they never work in this country. That worked even in America during the Great Depression. You go into public works. When you have a road passing your area, for example, how much economic activity does it bring? The contracts we give to the contractors do not have the labor component in it. And the few people who work on those roads are given peanuts, 200 shillings.
No, how is that relevant?
Listen, please, let me finish. But when you want, for example, road construction to have economic impact in the manner you are suggesting, inbuilt in the contract, there's a labor component in terms of perhaps what kind of labor you'll be using, minimum wages you'll be using, and so on and so forth, and how to source that labor. In our case, these people hardly employ sufficient labor. That's why they stay for 3 years instead of 6 months. So you cannot say a road is passing. Let me finish. I wanted to correct you, and Kenyans will understand and they'll agree with me. When a road is passing in a certain place, the number of people employed and the amount of money they are paid is so insignificant, it cannot work in the manner you are suggesting. So as a legislator in the future, ensure that when you have contracts, they work in the manner you are suggesting. That will be good for the country. Another correction I wanted to make was about Uncle Sam, America. If America is unhappy with a single country succeeding, how much more worried will they be with Africa succeeding as a union? Because if Africa succeeds, then the North will collapse. So if they are not happy and they ensure, like the manner you are saying, that small countries like Kenya cannot succeed economically, they will go out of their way to ensure that these things you are talking about, Africa unity and Africa free trade areas, don't succeed at all. You get the point. That's what you must know.
Okay. All right. I want to make to transition. Honorable Elachi, can I take feedback and then get to you in the 10 seconds? What Kenyans are saying on X at Citizen TV Kenya, Tam Gituku, hashtag to use is a daybreak. And like Wafuko Anjala, okay, let's begin with this is Katebes K. Honesty is an important virtue. Those in Kenya Kwanza Brigade should just know that the commoners are aware most of the promises they delivered were political. Fuel levies are determined by many external forces. Okay. Oleshonko, this government have everything within its power to control the price of fuel. There's no deliberate efforts to save Wanjiku from the rising cost of fuel. It is getting bad to us. Boss is goose chasing on the reality on the ground. Okay. Okelo Mwalimu, I like the eloquence with which presidents, henchmen and women like Gladys Boss are justifying ever-rising fuel prices. Where was this eloquence during the campaigns? Why did they blame Uhuru for high pump prices? Politicians should never use logical fallacies to win seats. Is it possible to have logical fallacies? I don't know. That's a fallacy in itself.
Yeah, it's a contradiction.
Okay, all right. Honorable Elachi, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I just wanted to say this. You know, and just to tell Mheshimiwa, when, as Kenyans, by the way, when I wake up in the morning, I don't come here to please any political party. I come here to see how we can reason together to get a few solutions for my country, Kenya, which I love. And therefore, when we are talking about some of these issues, they are very painful. And the painful part comes when we know, all of us, when we were campaigning, both sides, we were giving Kenyans everything that we would say, but we refused to look at logic and the truth. But time has come, as politicians, we must face our mistakes and say, tell Kenyans, indeed here, we did wrong. And now we are faced with the same Ukraine, the same Russia,
and that rubies
now
does
Israel,
not belong to Uhuru.
Now, well, I don't know whether it belongs or not. I won't go. I have vowed to myself, talking about my former president, he left. By the way, I don't. I keep off on that. Because he has left, the country has to move on. It has to move on with us now, who are in leadership, who are both in leadership in Parliament, to rethink. We must go back and look at our finance bill and ask ourselves, in our supplementary, how can we caution Kenyans before we get into Christmas, where children are about to close some for 2 months. 2 months, I don't know where Nairobi they will be, and I'm hoping the governor will try his best to even bring food. But forget about the one, it is the one, yeah. food to these kids that they can continue having lunch, or else we shall have a serious crisis in our country called Kenya. So when we look at this fuel, it's not just about fuel. It's about, it has just taken our homes again. A few, they were coming up. That dignity.
So are you able to promise any action in Parliament? Because you see,
we have to. We have to sit down together. This one, we don't need to play the politics. We just need to sit down and look at this bill and ask ourselves, how do we caution for a few months this country before Kenyans find themselves again back to zero? We have planted, we have done everything. It's just going to be a waste, because we will be looking at the prices and wondering, why then did I plant thinking I am going to ensure another Kenyan is able to have a meal?
Okay.
That Kenyan who doesn't have. Yes, my prof is saying we have to pay the issue of VAT. For me, I remember in Parliament, I was really fighting some to see VAT goes the way the East African countries are, so that we reduce some of these taxes in terms of what we were feeling is going to pain people. So if VAT goes to 18 and then you reduce these other taxes, then you cushion. But if you put all these taxes today together, you might even find our VAT at 25 without knowing, because you are paying all over this. When you bulk it together, it's a very high VAT. So why can't we think and say, let VAT go to 18, and then now deal with these other taxes and see if we can bring them down, and every Kenyan now feel you're paying that VAT, but the other taxes are down. We have to think.
Okay, you know, already there's a proposal in the medium-term revenue strategy. Kenyans may not be very happy to hear you say that, but anyway, we'll wait to see what transpires. There's one more feedback that I want us to take a look at. This is Wafuko. These honorable members are just there to give excuses. Let them talk austerity. Those humongous salaries of theirs and wastage in unnecessary travel. Tuanze hapo. That's what he is saying. But I think I saw Cabinet approving supplementary estimates to reduce the expenditure by 10%. We'll wait to see what that reflects in
10%?
totality. 10% of expenditure.
Which expenditure?
I don't know. It's in the supplementary estimates. We'll wait to see.
You see, that is where also we find our teams really, because having looked how government works, honestly, Sam, it's because if you stop people going, let's say, for example, to this local tourism, let me call it tourism, as they go. So what happens to those hotels? Do they close down?
Come on.
Do those Kenyans, because it's government that is supposed to use their amounts, their monies, to build some of these things. Prof said we have to do business. So if you kill the same business that government is doing with these other
Some people don't do business with government. People rob government.
Well, that's what I was coming to say. The problem is not...
Wafuko tweet, or is it a post? It's called post these days.
Yes.
It speaks a lot, which we must have a conversation around.
In terms of stealing, it starts stealing by those who even do business with government. So it's not about stealing from a person who is going for...
Honorable Elijah was to have the final word, which he has had. Let's transition, because something else happened last week, and that was the decision on the GMO products. The court said that indeed they find no tangible basis